Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box. And you cannot compare them at all, so don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Yeah. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Woo. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast. It is Saturday, and that means week 18 of the NFL season kicks off today. A couple of very meaningful games will take place today, a couple meaningful games tomorrow, but also a lot of games just to wrap up the season. So we will be looking at all of it. But Dennis, they really did a good job of putting the meaningful games in these national spotlight windows. And that starts with our first game on Saturday, where the 8-8 Carolina Panthers are at the 7-9 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Both these teams, it's been like, who's going to end up with this division? You know, both of them lost last week. Carolina lost to Seattle, which was maybe a little more understandable than Tampa Bay losing to the Miami Dolphins. But if Tampa Bay wins today, they will take this division at 8-9. If Carolina wins, they'll at least be above 500. But can we trust this Panthers offense?
The short answer is no. You can't trust it. I mean, Bryce Young has, I think he's only had like 2 games over 200 yards passing. What did he have? 54 yards passing last week.
Yeah, it was great.
I think that the Panthers, you know, they have both teams have something to play for, because obviously the winner gets the division and is in the playoffs. And I think right now that matters more to Carolina. And you know, they're coming out of this rebuild, and they traded a bunch of draft picks for Bryce Young. And to be fair, it doesn't look like they came out on the winning end of that deal. Bryce has been very up and down. Now, the running game with Dowdell and Hubbard has been pretty good. Jatavian Sanders looks like the future at tight end. They have some weapons at wide receiver with McMillan and Coker and Leggett. So the basis is there for a good offense. You don't need they don't need an elevator at quarterback, but they do need an executor. And Bryce Young has struggled in the execution part of it sometimes. Whether that's because the defense is getting over on their O-line and maybe they need to improve their O-line, or maybe at times the play calling may become a little bit predictable, or just the way that oblong ball bounces sometimes. But I think the Panthers don't want to miss the playoffs and let a team with a losing record in the playoffs. And so I think they're going to lay it all on the table. They're going to be one and done in the playoffs, but I think I don't think Bryce Young is going to elevate them in this game, but I think they're going to work hard on the execution part of it. He's going to target Tetaroa, McMillan, maybe a little more than he has some games. So I don't trust the offense, but I feel like they have a little more to play for than the Buccaneers.
Well, the Buccaneers, meanwhile, their offense had been kind of a strength of the team for the last couple of years, but it's really been sputtering. We're 1-7 this last 8 games, but still they have a chance All they have to do is
You're
beat
telling me
Carolina
there's a
at
chance.
home. Can they get this offense together?
They have some weapons. Emeka Ibuka has faded as Godwin and Evans have gotten healthy and Bucky Irving has gotten healthy. He's kind of dropped down the priority chart, but he's still having a fantastic rookie year. Chris Godwin, for all the injuries he's gone through, is playing very well. Mike Evans is back and doing what he does. They've got a good running game with Bucky Irving and Rashad White and Sean Tucker. And to be honest, there's no reason they shouldn't win this game with that offense. If it comes down to who can outscore who, I would go with the Buccaneers. But ultimately, I think the Panthers have a little more to play for. I know there's a little bit of rumblings that maybe they're not as happy with Todd Bowles as during this losing streak as they may have been at one point in time. And whether losing, if he finished the season 1-8, will that cost him his job? That's a great question. We see patience with starting quarterbacks and head coaches seems to have grown shorter and shorter over the past, 5 to 10 years. Teams are a lot more willing to cash out early. And Bowles has been there for a couple, 3-4 seasons now. And finishing 1-8 may just put him on the streets looking for a defensive coordinator job, which he's probably a better defensive coordinator than he is a head coach. I'm going to it's a true coin flip and maybe even leans towards the Buccaneers, I'm going to take the Panthers.
I thought about this one for a while. I'm taking the Buccaneers.
I didn't think about it hardly at all. So that's my defense if I'm wrong.
I mean, it's been amazing. Neither of these teams feels good. The Buccaneers, I thought they were going to win that first matchup between these teams, and they kind of choked it away at the end. The loss to Miami really gave me pause, but I think they'll get it done. The nightcap on Saturday is for the number 1 overall seed in the NFC. We have the 13-3 Seattle Seahawks at the 12-4 San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers win. They will win the West, be the number 1 seed, and have home field advantage through the Super Bowl because it is being played in San Francisco. If Seattle wins, they win the West. They are the number 1 seed and will have home field advantage until the Super Bowl. This is the exact same position Sam Darnold was in going into the regular season finale last year with Minnesota. We saw him kind of overcome his demons against the Rams and get a big win there on Thursday night with maybe some help from some wild plays. How important is this game for Sam Darnold and his development as a franchise guy?
So this is one of those games where you see a guy come in the league with really highly regarded, he was the second pick or third pick in the draft, something real high. And it didn't go well at all. We had the seeing ghost game and, he spent some time in Carolina and didn't he spend a season in San Francisco too? Or no, he was
as a backup
and at Minnesota. So he's kind of made the rounds with some of the quarterback guru coaches. And as he's matured, he's gotten a little better. I don't know that his skill set has gotten better, but maybe he's gotten better at playing within his limitations. He's got the number 1 wide receiver in the game in Jackson Smith and Jigba. Is Shaheed out or is he back in?
Let me check. I think he is playing.
They've got probably the worst backfield situation for fantasy football in the league.
He's not listed on the injury report, so I assume he's playing.
So they've got an explosive guy in Rashid Shaheed. Cooper Kupp is, he's the regulator there. He's going to get you your 4 for 40, 3 for 30, kind of, make a tough catch, get a tough first down when you need it. And honestly, A.J. Barner is coming on as a tight end. I actually benched Travis Kelce last week for A.J. Barner in a championship game. Ended up being the right move, but only by 2 or 3 points. It wasn't like Barner went off like he has a couple times earlier. And to be fair, I don't think it was that big a stretch to bench Travis Kelce. But as this game in Sam Darnold's career, we saw him get over the hump with the Rams when, it seemed like they got out a little bit early and then he got shook a little bit, but he fought back at the end and was able to bring the Seahawks back. I like Sam Darnold, and as he's matured a little bit, he's a good athlete. He can give you some on the ground. The 49ers defense isn't what it used to be. They've had a ton of injuries on that side of the ball, so they can add. I don't know, like if you're playing in a Week 18 game for a championship or the second week of a 2-week championship, I really struggle with what to do with the running backs. I think Kenneth Walker is the better talent. He's also the more fragile of the two and probably not as good a pass catcher as Charbonnet. And I think he runs a little more powerful than Charbonnet, but Charbonnet outweighs him by 20 pounds. And so they like to use Charbonnet on short yardage and goal line. So it's a puzzling situation to try to figure out, if Walker doesn't break a couple plays, he ends up being a very middling running back. And Charbonnet, typically, if he doesn't get a touchdown, he ends up being a very middling running back. So that being said, I think this is a huge game for Darnold. He's going to have to execute well against a good defensive coordinator in Robert Saleh. Saleh will scheme it up, and Darnold is going to have to make some adjustments and figure some stuff out. So we'll see how he does. I think it's a huge game for him. It could be one of those games that really starts to move him. I don't think he's ever going to be considered elite, but I think he could move into a safe starter position for the next few seasons, especially, if he re-signs with Seattle after this contract and McDonald stays there and they have some semblance of success.
Yeah, if you were playing, if you were making some plays from this game, I think I agree with you for Seattle. Barner is a guy that Darnold just looks for when it matters most. He's come up big the last 2 weeks in must-win games against the Rams and the Panthers. And what happens with Ken Walker is going to be one of the most interesting things, I think, this offseason, because it certainly seems like they don't value him in the same way you've seen other teams value other running backs. Charbonnet is the one that gets the goal line work. And, Walker did well against the Rams because he broke that one off for a long touchdown. Otherwise, it's like he's not seeing the end zone. So it's kind of funny. On the other side, Brock Purdy earlier this season when Mac Jones kind of went on his run, people were like, should they have paid Brock Purdy? Was it even worth it? He has quietly come back and dominated on a points per game basis. He is quarterback 2 this season. He's had 26 or more points each of the last 3 weeks as the 49ers have kind of quietly moved themselves in position to be the number 1 seed and be possibly the second team in history to be a home team for the Super Bowl. Is it possible we've been underrating Brock Purdy?
Brock Purdy has been underrated since he was the last pick in the draft. And, he's got a Robert Conrad type chip on his shoulder, and he's walking around daring people to knock it off. If that team is healthy, they have a ton of firepower on offense. Christian McCaffrey, he feels like he is going to be the biggest landmine in fantasy football next year, because we've seen it twice in his career where he's had monster workloads followed up by injury-plagued seasons. And he's had a monster workload this year. He's headed for 1,000-yard rushing, 1,000-yard receiving season. He's putting up a shit ton of fantasy points. And it's going to be, for me, it's going to take a lot of guts to draft Christian McCaffrey in the first round next year as a 29, 30-year-old back coming off a monster workload. But when he's right, he's the best fantasy football running back in the league and maybe the best running back in the league. So he fits well with what Purdy does. He allows Purdy to have a very consistent short game, and because he runs well enough and they're able to spell him in the running game with Brian Robinson, that allows George Kittle to make plays in the intermediate areas and Ricky Pearsall and Jawan Jennings to make plays down the field. As long as Trent Williams is healthy at left tackle, they've got their anchor out there. The offense knows with the way the defense is playing right now, they have to score points. And, they're like, what's an elite brand? Tiffany's, Hermes. They're like Louis Vuitton. They're like the Louis Vuitton Cincinnati Bengals. They have a fantastic offense and a good defense. Not their defense isn't as bad as the Bengals, but by and large, they do have to outscore their opponents because their defense has been so banged up. It's easy to overlook Brock Purdy because he can be just kind of vanilla, but he's an underrated athlete. He runs well. He doesn't look to run, but when he does, he picks up chunks of yardage. I think if you could count on him running, maybe you'd feel a little stronger about rating him higher. But in the Kyle Shanahan offense, he's every bit as good a fit as Mac Jones is. And, I love what Mac Jones did coming in and playing well. At some point, he's going to earn another shot at starting. He is probably going to be a hot commodity this offseason, even though he's under contract. I think teams are going to be knocking on San Francisco's door, trying to see if they can get Jones to come in and either, gift him a starting job or have him compete with somebody that's, a gift. But ultimately, I feel like are playing for a culture, and that's why I like the Seahawks.
I am taking the 49ers. I feel like they've just come out of nowhere and they're going to get it. I like Sam Darnold, and they've been a good story, and I know that they're now 14-2 on the road with Mike McDonald. But I just feel like San Francisco gets it. So the Saturday games, a chef's kiss. Sunday night game, which we'll get to, also a lot of intrigue. The Sunday day games, not all incredible. We will start with a battle in the NFC South. The other two teams, the 6-10 New Orleans Saints and the 7-9 Atlanta Falcons. If the Falcons win, they could actually end up 8-9. We can see 3 8-9 teams in that division, one going to the playoffs, depending on how things shake out. But both of these teams, I think, had some rough patches, but have been pretty strong down the stretch. We'll start with the Saints. With Tyler Shook, we weren't sure what to expect. I like what I've seen. I like how they have seemingly built around him. Unfortunately, they've had so many injuries. Both Neal and Kamara have been out in the backfield. Devon Vele, who was coming on, went on to IR at wide receiver. But Chris Olave has been pretty strong, although won't play in this finale, unfortunately for them. Your boy Jawan Johnson has been pretty strong. I kind of like what Kellen Moore is doing with the Saints. Do you like them moving into next year?
Yeah, Moore drafted Tyler Shook, and he felt good enough about him despite him being, an AARP member. Shook's a good athlete. He's played well. He's making good decisions. Developed a real connection with Chris Olave. It was wild. They traded Rashid Shaheed as, I get it. They're in rebuild, but Shaheed felt like him and Olave made a real nice pairing. But Olave and Juwan Johnson do as well. They're down receivers this game now, and it's going to be, Kevin Austin, Dante Pettis, Ronnie Bell, who they're going to bring up off the practice squad with the injuries. Looks like Elijah Cooks is the only wide receiver they have on the practice squad. So they may have to grab somebody off of somebody else's practice squad and activate them. with Olave out. Samari Torre, former Green Bay Packer, is listed as their 5th wide receiver. It's going to be wild. I think, is Kamara back, or is he out?
I think that he is still out. He has not really been able to. I don't know. They're almost their entire team is on the injury report. I actually don't see. Yeah, he's out.
So, it's going to be Audric Estime and Evan Hull in the running game. So, as much as I'd love to see them kind of carry it on, Kelvin Banks has played well at left tackle. Talise Fuaga, last year's first-round pick at right tackle. So they're kind of building the offense from the inside out and investing some later-round picks and some low-end free agents to kind of build out the team. And they went through the let's see what Rattler can do. He's been here. He played okay, but it seemed like Rattler was risk averse. He wouldn't take chances. And in the end, it ended up biting him in the butt. Shook came in and was like, I don't have anything to lose. And so he took chances and they was able to turn them into big plays and kind of took over that game. I don't expect them to go quarterback early in this draft. They may look to bring in somebody with a little more seasoning than Spencer Rattler as a backup. But even if they don't, I think they're comfortable with what Rattler brings to the table, and I think they can work the offense with him. They've got a lot of skill position injuries. It's going to be tough for them to be competitive even with the Falcons. It wouldn't surprise me if they are, because Tyler Shook he's making plays and he's going to go out there. Jawan Johnson's going to do some stuff. Is our guy on IR?
He broke up there a little bit. Who are you looking for?
Devon Vele. Yeah,
he's on IR.
Him and boy, it would have been a great opportunity for Vele and Foster Moreau to make some hay.
I think he's on IR too, Moreau.
He is.
Yeah. Everybody's on IR. Meanwhile, the Falcons, now sitting at 7-9 with a win. They could be 8-9. They've won 3 straight. Kirk Cousins 4-3 as a starter for them. Likely their best option for 2026. Could they actually be competitive next year?
Yeah, I mean, they've got, with Drake London and Bijan Robinson, they've got weapons. And I think Darnell Mooney is still under contract. What they do, are they going to bring Kyle Pitts back, who has had another breakout year? I think with Kirk, the thing is they've been paying him all this time. You might as well, I get it. He face planted and you went with Penix, and whether or not that was the right decision at this point, we don't know. Penix is injured again. I'd like to, if I'm the Falcons, I'm already paying this guy. We've seen him be competent, if not spectacular. He can be competent. He struggles occasionally with some things as he's getting older, but draft some more O-line. Beef up your wide receiver or tight end room. If they can bring back Tyler Algier to continue to pair with Bijan Robinson, as much as it can be a thorn in our side as fantasy players at times, that makes they're a great running back duo. And they invested a lot of draft capital in their defense last year, and we've seen it start to pay off this year. So have, I think outside of an elite quarterback, they don't have a great big giant, we've got to fill X position in the draft. So they can be flexible. They can take the players that they think are the best at that point in the draft. They can move to acquire players that fit their scheme. So I like where the Falcons are at, and I think they can be competitive for the division next year.
I am taking Atlanta today or tomorrow. 4-12 Cleveland Browns at the 6-10 Cincinnati Bengals, both teams out of it. What do you think the Browns do with Shedeur Sanders in 2026?
I think that is highly dependent upon what they do with Kevin Stefanski at the end of this year. Honestly, I don't think there's any way they I don't feel like Stefanski. I still think that he holds the trump card in that Deshaun Watson albatross he wears around his neck that Jimmy Haslam saddled him with. And so I think they're still in the getting a pass for having to deal with that. And it certainly looked like Watson was trending to be healthy enough to play here at the end of the season. Kevin Stefanski said, "Nah, dog, we're good."
Yeah. Well,
and so they still have something like 35 to 50 million guaranteed next year for Deshaun Watson. If they do get rid of him, it's a monster dead cap hit, I believe. If they are able to trade him somewhere, they're going to have the majority of that salary to do it. That being said, we've seen teams before take on big contracts. The Browns with Brock Osweiler take on a big contract, but in return get a higher draft pick but for taking on contract. So they're willing to say, well, look, we're going to pay X amount of his salary, but this draft a second round pick, not a fifth round pick kind of approach. I think with Shedeur, if Stefanski's back, they're saddled with the salary cap nemesis of Deshaun Watson. I think Shedeur goes into the 2026 season atop the depth chart. I think they're going to look to bring in a veteran to group with him and Dylan Gabriel, a veteran that can actually play, not Deshaun Watson. Getting Quinshon Judkins healthy. Harold Fannin was great at the tight end position. They re-signed David Njoku last offseason, I think, to a 3-year deal. He's still got some time and money left on his contract, but that they make a nice tight end pair. Jerry Jeudy was underwhelming, to say the least. Cedric Tillman was injured. Isaiah Bond flashed a little bit with Shedeur Sanders. So they're going to need to do something in the wide receiver room. To me, it feels like they need a stereotypical alpha wide receiver. Cedric Tillman ain't that guy. But a lot of drafts mock drafts, I see them taking guys like Casey Concepcion, who's good, but he's just, one of these 5'10", 180 pounders. And I think they need, a 6'2", 220 guy with real good speed that's, an A.J. Brown, Drake London kind of beast mode type of receiver is what I think they need. Maybe they're like, yeah, we got that with Fannin and Njoku. So we're going to go with a burner. But, they also need to continue to rebuild their line. They had pinned a lot of hopes on DeJuan Jones at left tackle. He's a mammoth man, and he can't stay healthy. Jack Batonio came back last year after pondering retirement. Wouldn't surprise me if he actually does retire this offseason. He's getting up there. So they need a lot of O-line work. The defense is really good. They've got a lot of really good players. Carson Schweschinger should be, if not the defensive rookie of the year, certainly in the conversation.
For the Bengals, it was a grim couple of weeks for Burrow with some of his public comments and, people wondering whether he wanted out or whether he was going to retire. It looks like he's been more into it the last couple of weeks. Looked like he was definitely having a lot more fun last week. Do you think Joe Burrow is a Bengal in 2026?
I don't think there's anywhere Joe Burrow would rather be than Cincinnati. He's a Southern Ohio guy. He grew up a Bengals fan. He wants to see the Bengals win. He wants to help the Bengals win. Unfortunately, he influenced a poor salary cap decision with T. Higgins. I get it. Higgins is great, but he has put that team into a situation. They're the Peyton Manning Colts now. They have to outscore everybody, period. And if it weren't for Dallas, they'd be the worst defense in the league. But I think Joe Burrow likes he likes being in Cincinnati. He likes being close to home. He wants to be a Bengal. He loves, he's not going to leave after all of his public comments to get Jamar Chase and T. Higgins signed back in Cincinnati. He's not going to say I want out, at least until they're to the end of their deals. And Chase Brown, really strong at the running back position. The offensive line is getting a little bit better, and they have to invest some in the O-line, but I think their draft this year is going to look like Atlanta's draft last year, which was almost exclusively defensive players. I think Cincinnati needs to draft at least one early-ish round offensive lineman. They probably need to bring in some offensive linemen via free agency, but they need a giant talent infusion on defense, because Lou Anarumo showed in Indianapolis this year that he wasn't the problem in Cincinnati when it comes to the defense.
Yeah. I am taking the Bengals in this one.
So am I.
The 9-6-1 Green Bay Packers at the 8-8 Minnesota Vikings. I would have thought the Packers, who have been on a real slide of late, would want to go into the playoffs with some kind of momentum and a win, even though their seed is fairly locked, but they are deciding to sit everyone. Do you think that is the right call?
So they've been dealing with some injuries, but I don't want to go into the playoffs losing momentum. And when you start sitting, we see it a lot where teams will sit star players, and even when it is especially glaring if the team has the number one seed and these players now are sitting for 3 weeks and they get kind of rusty, it's hard to turn that on and off and play with no real meaning. We hear that all the time about, well, players don't tank, organizations tank. And while this isn't technically tanking, if you've got better players that that are ready to play, it's probably in your best interest to play them. So they're going to go with Clayton Tune. Josh Jacobs has been battling injuries, but I don't think he's on the injury report anymore, but I wouldn't expect him to play much. I think Dontavian Wick is dinged up. Nothing is going to come from playing Christian Watson with Clayton Tune. Watson gets injured too frequently. Why are you going to put him out there with your third string quarterback that has a history of not being good? So I'm seeing a lot of Bo Melton in this game, honestly.
And it's just, they were 9-3-1, and they've lost 3 straight. It feels like they're fairly well surrendering this game, which it might be interesting depending on how things go with Chicago and Detroit. Minnesota gets a win here. Detroit may end up being the last place in the division. And I think it's weird to just roll in losing 4 straight. I know they've had all those injuries, but I was somewhat stunned that they wouldn't want to try to get Jordan Love out there and get into some kind of a rhythm, because he's missed the last couple of games and they've been terrible. They got trucked in an important game with the Ravens last week. They lost a big one to the Bears. They got pretty well handled by Denver. Those are not good games. Those are potentially 3 losses to 3 playoff teams. Baltimore will have to see. I was surprised that this is their approach.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like you're building successful momentum.
Meanwhile, The Minnesota Vikings, it's been an up and down season for sure with JJ McCarthy. But how are you feeling about them heading into next year?
I have no idea what to expect. We've seen McCarthy have some good games on low volume. We know he's a plus athlete, and so he's going to provide some in the ground game. Trying to ride the Jordan Mason, Aaron Jones running back carousel. They have games where they're pretty good and some games where they're not. They've grossly misused TJ Hawkinson, in my opinion. Granted, he's had trouble staying healthy. And as bad as they have misused TJ Hawkinson, they've exponentially misused Justin Jefferson. Losing Jordan Addison for, what was it, 6 games or 4 games, 3 games to a suspension to start the season wasn't great. They have some weapons. And I know the recent hubbub out of Minnesota was that they're working on extending Brian Flores' contract, which is great because that puts Kevin O'Connell firmly in the I don't have to worry a lick about the defense side of the ball. I think Flores is going to be a hot head coaching candidate, especially now that he can walk around and hang his hat on how he was right about Tua and he should have never been ran out of Miami. But Flores is just working magic with that defense. So that puts him in the position where McCarthy often, he doesn't have to put the team on his back. He just has to not make mistakes. And we haven't seen him be able to consistently do that. So I like JJ McCarthy going into next season. There's going to need to be a ton of growth, maybe because this year, maybe we'll see some of that growth because he can take physical reps and not just mental reps. Again, they're going to have to figure out what are they doing at the running game. Is their offensive line good enough? Do they need to, are they getting old there? I know Brian O'Neill is getting up there. Darisaw struggled with health. But I think they probably are going to bring in a veteran. I heard somebody mention Mac Jones as an option for them to bring in case McCarthy falters. I just don't think Mac Jones will go there. Mac Jones is going to go somewhere where
he's under contract. Mac Jones signed a 2-year
deal.
But
I wouldn't be surprised if the 49ers are open to trading him.
I don't know. I just would be surprised.
Jones is going to want to get traded somewhere where he has a chance to compete.
I am actually going to take the Vikings. I originally took the Packers, but since the Packers seem to have given up.
I was in that same boat, and I flip-flop with you.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the Packers would try to win, but apparently they don't care. The 7-8-1 Dallas Cowboys at the 3-13.
They're playing that hope strategy.
The 3-13 New York Giants. This week, Jerry Jones talked about how he's happy with what Brian Schottenheimer has done. He thinks the team is trending in the right direction. Do you agree?
Well, they can finish with a non-losing record if they win this game.
And they should win this game.
Thanks to that tie. They're playing a division rival, so you never know what's going to happen. Despite the trade of Micah Parsons, the defense seems to be playing a little bit better. It seems like very much a sum of the parts kind of move worked. Getting rid of Trayvon seems like he might not have been the best locker room guy. I don't.
Yeah. Which, ironically, now he's gone to the Packers, so I'm sure that'll help them. This that Micah Parsons trade seems like it's turning out to be the rare lukewarm for both teams.
Correct. It certainly does, and unfortunately for the Green Bay side of it, it's because he got injured, and Dallas getting the draft capital they did and getting a defensive tackle, which they needed a defensive tackle, bringing in Quinnen Williams. So now Quinnen Williams and Kenny Clark at the defensive tackle position have shored up that defense. They've still got a long ways to go on the defensive side of the ball. If I had to guess, I'd say they're going to end up franchise tagging George Pickens because Jerry Jones waits until the very last minute to do anything contractually with his superstars so he can pay them the most amount of money possible. So he's not going to start right off the Pickens to an extension. Maybe he will because he saved the money on the Micah Parsons trade. But they have an offense that can put up some points. They need their offensive line to get healthy and stay healthy. They could probably use an interior O lineman, but they're outside guys, and so the Tylers are all use like a center or a right guard probably to shore up their offensive line, and then coach the defensive side of the ball up, bring in some pieces, draft or free agency, see if you can get them to develop some chemistry. I think Schottenheimer has done a reasonable job. I don't think he's been awful, but I don't think he's been great either. So, he's certainly not on the chopping block at this time.
No, I think they've had a more successful season than I expected. It came out earlier last week that the Giants, who were in the mix for the number 1 overall draft pick until they beat the Raiders, might have been looking at the top quarterbacks in the draft, despite the fact that they just took Jackson Dart. Dart even responded to that. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, looking at some of the poor performances from Dart, that he may not be the answer. But should the Giants be considering taking a quarterback in this draft?
So if the Giants are coming out talking about taking a quarterback, it's so that somebody that needs a quarterback will come up and give them a haul for that pick. Should they? I think Dart had flaws coming out, and we knew what they were. And they were often on display. But he also is a playmaker, and he's a guy that brings excitement to the field. So getting him in a position where he stops getting his head banged up and can make some plays consistently, he's willing to take chances. He's got an arm. He's very mobile. He's got to play smarter. But he's going to be in that, it's been like, I feel like the last half of this season, every week I'm talking about some team that's in the draft a quarterback, fire the head coach, GM, new regime comes in, cycle of team building. And here the Giants are. They draft, they had the regime in there. They brought in a rookie quarterback, fired the head coach and the GM. Now they're hiring a head coach and GM to come in. Is that guy going to want to stick with this quarterback the last regime drafted, or are they going to make a cursory effort to make it work and then go get their own guy in a season or so? We see it. It's like clockwork. We see it. Maybe they bring in a quarterback guru guy that fits, that makes Dart take this step to the next level. Maybe they're like, you know what? We're up here. Fernando Mendoza's within shot of us. We're going to go get Mendoza. Thank you for your service, Jackson Dart.
Yeah, I think the most likely is that they end up rolling with Dart, and they had signed Jameis Winston to a 2-year deal, so they'd be okay. But I am going to take the Cowboys in this one.
So am I.
The 3-13 Tennessee Titans at the 12-4 Jacksonville Jaguars. Dennis, Tyjae Spears, had probably a better rookie campaign than we thought, which led to them moving on from Derrick Henry. But he has been missing in action the last 2 years between injuries and just not doing squat when he's on the field. I feel like he's droppable.
It depends on how deep your rosters are in Dynasty. He's one of these end of the bench guys right now that, part of the issue with Tennessee Titan players is that they have a rookie quarterback that needed developed, firing a head coach in season. And while there have been Cam Ward, overall, the offense has not been productive. And it's really hard to be in the, 35-40% share of the backfield split when you're in a low production offense. It doesn't fantasy. I think the talent is there. I think Spears is an explosive runner. I think he's a decent pass catcher. I don't think he's going to overtake Tony Pollard going into next year, but the offense needs to get more productive for a lot of these players to be more fantasy relevant. And whether it's Spears or Chimere Dike or Elike Omenor, right now, outside of Ward, it's a roll of the dice on which one Tennessee Titan that's not the quarterback is going to be worth playing. And more often than not, it is Tony Pollard. Going into next, we've seen Gunnar Helm have some good games. I feel like while Helm is going to be out this week, going into next year, if Tennessee decided to start running more two tight end offense with Helm and Okonkwo, you're going to be looking at some production coming out of that spot. They need a bona fide wide receiver one. Can Elike Omenor be that guy? I guess we're going to have to wait and see. I'm not sure. Let's see, did he hit that mythical 500-yard mark where we look at? Let me pull it up here. No, he's at 465. So if he can get to that 500-yard mark as a rookie, Chimere Dike needs 104 yards. So, but Dike is a different type of receiver. He's more of a possession guy. So I feel like I almost hit that 5 mark, which is going to make him worth gambling on in the back third of your back third of your wide receiver group on your dynasty rosters. Tyjae Spears is the same thing. He's one of those guys, if you can roster him as your RB 5, 6, 7, he may pay off surprisingly well by the end of next year.
Jaguars, meanwhile, will be playing to get a win because they still have an outside shot at the number 1 overall seed, and they need to lock up their division. They locked up Jacoby Myers going forward. They seem to have found a fit with him. I think they found a good fit with Brenton Strange and Lawrence. Not sure what's going on with Brian Thomas. Also, contract year for ATN. What do you think they do this offseason?
It's tough to tell because they've played well for Liam Cohen. And Cohen and seem to be getting on the same page, which has been really, really nice to see. Lawrence finally starting to reach that the vaunted potential he had coming out of college. I think I agree with you. They're solid at starting tight end. I don't know if they have a backup that can step in if it's time. With Quentin Morris, Johnny Munt, and Hunter Long, they all seem like kind of blocking type tight ends. With the pending return of Travis Hunter, it feels like the Parker Washington, Brian Thomas thing is going to kind of, are they going to say, hey, we have an opportunity to trade Brian Thomas somewhere and get a really nice return based on his potential because we've got Travis Hunter and Jacoby Myers and Parker Washington. And while we could trade any of those guys, they're not going to get us the return that Brian. And while Thomas has had a disappointing year after the way he ended last year, I think there are a lot of coaches out there that are going to look at that physical talent and look at what he did the last half of the 24 season with Mac Jones and be like, yeah, I can make that happen every week on my team. It's so much draft capital to Cleveland to get Travis Hunter. It makes sense for them to try to recoup some. And you've got, an extra player basically with Brian Thomas. I feel like if Travis Hunter's a little slow getting back, or they're still playing he's going to play X amount of defensive 4 and 5. I feel like they're like, well, we can make it work. We got Parker and Jacoby with one of those two guys out there. That's just good for Parker and Jacoby, and we can put Travis on defense a little bit. I think they just need to take a look, reinforce some of their positions where they're a little bit weak, and keep moving forward. And one of the ways I think they can do that is to move off of Brian Thomas to a team that's looking for a potential wide receiver one. Who could use a player like Brian Thomas? The Cleveland Browns. Yeah. But they don't need to send draft capital for him because they've got so many other issues. But he's that big type of receiver that they need, though.
I am taking the Jaguars to win this week.
So am I.
The 8-8 Indianapolis Colts wrap up at the 11-5 Houston Texans. No Phillip Rivers. They're going to start Riley Leonard. They are out of it. Rivers has announced he's going back to being retired. What do you think?
5 more years of health insurance.
Yeah. What do you think that the Colts do at quarterback this offseason?
I think they try to re-sign Daniel Jones and see if he can be, obviously coming off the injury, that's gonna create a little bit of a discount for him. They're gonna see what they have in Riley Leonard as the potential backup right now. I haven't looked deeply at what the free agent quarterback market looks like, so they may dabble a little bit in free agency if it feels like Jones is gonna be 4, 5, 6 weeks into the season before he gets back. But Riley Leonard may go out against Houston and give us an Ashton Genty kind of game and make him go, you know what? If we have to start 4 games next year with him while Daniel Jones finishes getting healthy, we can get by with that.
Well, they still have Richardson.
I don't think he plays another down for them. I think he can be had this offseason by a team that thinks they can develop him.
Meanwhile, for the Texans, we did not see Joe Mixon at all in 2025, and it's really been mysterious what exactly is going on. Do you think we see him in 2026?
So have you had the pleasure of watching the show The Beast in Me?
Uh-huh.
So it feels like he's gone the way of Madison, honestly. Look, he's just fucking disappeared, man.
Yeah. And it's, one of the least talked about for a big player. I am honestly of the opinion we may never see him again. There's just been no discussion.
I mean, I don't think so. The Colts are going to have to be willing to take a 5th or a 6th round pick for him, to get rid of him, or just wait till his contract runs out. But they seem to have no interest in playing him or even developing him.
Well, and there's not even supposedly he's injured, but there really hasn't been a lot of discussion. 2024. They have a potential out this offseason of his contract. So
feels like it's coming.
Yeah. It's only a $2 million cap hit to release him. So yeah. And I mean, I have rarely seen a player that kind of a profile where there's been more discussion of Brandon Ayuk. At least we know why he's not coming back. I don't know what happened with Mixon. Either way, I'm taking the Texans this week.
Yep, so am I.
3-13 New York Jets at the 11-5 Buffalo Bills. What do you think is the best option to help the Jets get on track in 2026?
It almost feels like it might be a Aaron Glenn one and done. But
they keep saying he's totally safe and that this year has been about evaluating the roster. I don't know what they learned about the roster other than they're kind of boned at every position.
Yeah. Well, what they learned is they made a horrible quarterback decision, RIP Justin Fields. And none of their backups were really playable either. Garrett Wilson needs I like where the receiving group is headed. If they I think Mechie might be a free agent, but if they can bring him back with Wilson and who's the other guy?
Adonai Mitchell.
With Mason Taylor at the tight end position. I like that group as a group. They need some offensive line help. What they're going to do with Breece Hall? Are they going to franchise tag him? Are they going to extend him? It's a real strong running back market. Are they going to say, well, Breece, this is what we're willing to pay you? And if he says no, they go to whatever free agent running back in the market however they have them rated. They just start at the top of the list with that offer and go down until they get the one that takes it. I don't know. We'll see. Braylon Allen will be coming back off of injury. I think Isaiah Davis. I think he's out this week. But he's probably the least talented of the three backs they have. So they're going to need to rebuild their defense. Moving Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams probably wasn't optimal, though Gardner isn't what he was early in his career. He's still a pretty good defensive back. But I get why they did it. I agree. I don't think they're going to go one and done with Aaron Glenn. I think the moves they made to acquire draft capital were to put them in a position to be able to let Aaron Glenn and I forget who their new GM is, but to be able to start to build the team in the manner of which they prefer.
Darren Moogie.
Yeah.
And plenty of rebuilding to go around. The Bills, meanwhile, a couple of years ago when they moved on from Stephon Diggs, decided they didn't really need a franchise receiver to be successful. They've been successful up to a point the past couple of years, but I think that lack of a real franchise target in the passing game is biting them a little. Do you think that this offseason they changed tactics?
Well, we saw how that career arc worked for the Kansas City Chiefs after they moved on from Tyreek Hill. I think if they're smart, they're going to find a way. Oh, speaking of, great team could go get a Brian Thomas. That would be.
Yeah, I know your first was Cleveland. My first was Buffalo. Get off your anus and get it out there.
Yeah. So if they go, if they could bring in Brian Thomas, Keon Coleman, I think he's bringing a little too much off-field drama for him.
That's been a total bust.
Yeah, they have a wide receiver room with, a wide receiver 2-3 and Khalil Shakir and a whole bunch of 5-6s. And bringing in Brian Thomas would be a fantastic get for them to pair with Shakir, Cook, and Dalton Kincaid. To me, that would make. Do you have to have a top 10 wide receiver? Probably not, but you should probably have a top 20 wide receiver if you're hoping to go win Super Bowls.
I am taking the Bills this week.
So am I.
A game that'll be near and dear to your heart: the 8-8 Detroit Lions at the 11-5 Chicago Bears. Dennis, the Lions clocked the Bears the first time they played, but these teams have gone in opposite directions. Lions now officially eliminated. What do they need to do this offseason?
They need to rebuild their offensive line. I said going into the season that was my biggest worry. They need they just got old. They had guys retire. Zeitler left. Taylor Decker's been battling injuries. And don't get me wrong, I love Taylor Decker. Go Bucks. But he just has struggled when he's been quote unquote healthy and playing, he's been banged up. And so they need a youth infusion. They brought in Tate Ratledge last year. They probably need to get a bona fide center. I think they felt with the retirement of Ragnow that they could move Ratledge over to center because he played a little bit of it in college. And after they tried that, they were like, oh, we don't think this is going to work. So they put him back at guard. Great. You got him at guard. Flip Penei Sewell over to the left side. Make Taylor Decker your swing tackle. I know that's hard on the ego, but hey, he's an older player now that's constantly battling injuries. Maybe move him down inside. The Cowboys did that with Larry Allen later in his career. He started out as a tackle, moved down inside, and dominated at guard for a long time. Maybe that's the move with Taylor Decker. Let him finish out his career at guard. But they need to revamp the offensive line. I think they've got great weapons in Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jamison Williams. It certainly feels like the days of having two playable running backs in Detroit are over. I think Montgomery stays and accepts his role. He just seems like he's such a team guy that he's going to be ready when it's his turn. He understands there's going to be some games there ahead, and he's going to go in and he's going to get some run. But he looks at Jahmyr Gibbs and goes, man, that guy is really good. I get it. I totally get it. And then getting Sam Laporta back healthy, and then keep infusing strength and youth into the defense.
Meanwhile, for Chicago, we saw Colston Loveland explode a little bit last week. We've had some high hopes for him. It's been a inconsistent season, but do you think that they can work on making him a more consistent target?
I think so. When I look at the Bears, the obstacle to anybody on that team being a more consistent target is going to be overall passing volume, because they've got a lot of weapons. You've got Luther Burden, you've got DJ Moore, you've got Romo Dunze, you've got Colston Loveland. And when you've got that many weapons and a running game as effective as DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai have been, and a quarterback that can run like Caleb Williams when shit gets deep in the backfield, it can cause inconsistency in passing volume opportunity. We saw it really hit DJ Moore this year, until Romo Dunze got injured and when Luther Burden had not yet spread his wings, DJ Moore flexed up a little bit. It was a super disappointing season for DJ Moore managers. He just was not getting consistent volume. I would expect, honestly, DJ Moore feels like a guy that could be had if you're looking for a wide receiver. I think the Bears are super high on Luther Burden. Offseason, the talk was Luther Burden is going to be Ben Johnson's Amon-Ra St. Brown. You just got to be patient with it. And as we've gotten to the end of the season, Burden his season has went from 1, 2, 3 targets to 4, 5, 6 targets to now we're in that 8, 9, 10 target range. Granted, some of it is because Romo Dunze has been out injured, but it feels like Luther Burden is quickly ascending to the wide receiver 1 role in Chicago.
Yeah, you kind of saw it last week, a little bit of what it could be after the draft. I think Chicago gets the win this week because they have a chance to lock up the 2 seed.
I'm going to go with the Lions. I think Dan Campbell he is going to stop. I can't.
Yeah. Well, I know he would like to get the win. The 6-10 Kansas City Chiefs at the 2-14 Las Vegas Raiders. What a banger. Gut call. Do you think this is the final game for Travis Kelce?
Yes.
I do not. I think he's going to come back for one more year. But I guess we will see. What a sad way to go out if this ended up being, because it's him, Chris Oladokun, or I don't remember how to pronounce it.
Chris Oladokun.
On the other side, what do you think happens with Geno Smith?
I think a lot depends on what happens with Pete Carroll. I think if Carroll is gone and where the Raiders are picking, I think Gino's backing up Fernando Mendoza next year.
I think he's backing up Fernando Mendoza regardless. But he's not been good this year.
Honestly, the thing is if Pete stays, Pete is going to play this, Fernando's got to earn it. And so he'll start, and he's going to let Gino have a few bad games before he puts Mendoza in. That's my only thing.
I am taking the Chiefs in this one. I think the Raiders want no part of winning. They want that number one pick.
Yep, I agree.
The 11-5 Los Angeles Chargers at the 13-3 Denver Broncos. Chargers sitting a lot of players. They are going to start Trey Lance. What are you hoping to see from Trey Lance?
I want to see him not make mistakes.
Probably not the greatest game since he has no supporting cast in Denver.
Honestly, I think it's a great opportunity. Like if he passes for 150 yards and no touchdowns, but doesn't turn the ball over, completes 65% of his passes against a Denver defense that's phenomenal, I think that you can look at it and say, look, he didn't turn the ball over. He played, did he play conservative? That was the game plan. He didn't have a lot of weapons going against the best defense in the league, second best defense in the league. And if he goes out there and throws 3 interceptions, then I think it's more of, he's career backup, he'll bounce around the league. But, if he throws for 175, 200 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, no interceptions, no touchdowns, and plays well, has a decent completion percentage, doesn't take 8-9 sacks kind of game, I think it could bode well for somebody giving him a chance to compete.
Meanwhile, for Denver, RJ Harvey has looked pretty good the last few weeks in the feature back role. Came out this week that Broncos are unlikely to re-sign J.K. Dobbins. So do you think we'll continue to see RJ Harvey as a feature back in 2026?
I think so. I think they're gonna bring somebody in to be the hammer, whether that's re-signing or keeping, McLaughlin or Badir or somebody, 2 guys which neither one would necessarily be considered hammer type of backs. Feels like they're going to be looking for somebody, like a Khalil Mullings or a Phil Maffa type of back that, or an Audric Estime type of back that's big. And at times, if you need to go for, you want to hammer it for a yard or 2 yards, you've got that back. The downside of Harvey is I just don't think he's a guy you want to run into the center of the line 20 times a game. And he's an exceptional pass catcher. I think if he's getting 12 to 15 carries and 4 to 8 targets a game, that's plenty featured enough. Get him out there in space. He's shown that he can handle a workload like that and bring explosiveness to the offense. So I think they're going to bring in somebody that's a 35%er, and they're going to roll with RJ Harvey in the lead role.
I am taking the Broncos.
I am as well.
Next up, the 3-13 Arizona Cardinals at the 11-5 Los Angeles Rams. What do we think of Michael Wilson going forward?
So Michael Wilson and Marvin Harrison could be a T. Higgins, Jamar Chase kind of approach, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison kind of approach. It'll take some significant growth for Marvin, but whoever is going to be the Arizona coach and the Arizona quarterback has to have the capacity to involve 2 wide receivers when you have a tight end like Trey McBride. That's probably the biggest concern, that it ends up being you're playing whack-a-mole with Harrison and Wilson. Well, McBride is really the guy you want in Arizona.
Been a tough couple of weeks for the Rams without Devontae Adams. Is he becoming kind of crucial to their offensive success?
He provides he's like Liam Neeson. He's got a particular set of skills. I think having him there is a safety blanket kind of approach. As good as Puka Nacua is, if you're throwing a one-on-one ball, I think Matthew Stafford would rather throw that 50-50 ball to Davante Adams. I don't know that that's fair. I think Puka Nacua is at 6'2", 225, every bit as physically dominant as Davante Adams. I just think that Davante has this, he's a blanky type of receiver. You feel good when he's around and you can just kind of reach out and touch him and you're like, oh, I feel safe now. That's what Davante Adams provides.
I am taking the Rams in this one.
So am I.
And they did say they are going to play their starters and go for the win no matter what happens tonight. I think there is I think they're kind of, with that loss, locked into the 6th seed, but it makes sense that they want to play hard because I think 6th seed they're going to end up playing the Eagles. 7-9 Miami Dolphins at the 13-3 New England Patriots. What have you thought of Quinn Ewers?
I think he's been serviceable. He's making reasonably good decisions. Ewers' biggest issue coming out of college was, I think his last year of college, he had a banged up shoulder that was somewhat underreported upon, and so it really sapped some arm strength. He was the last quarterback drafted, and getting him opportunities now to play is good because you want the experience. I don't think he's the starter going into next year. I don't know that Tua is either. But I think Ewers is showing, hey, if I can find a coach that's willing to invest some time in me, at some point, I might be able to be Matt Schaub.
Meanwhile, for the Patriots, a lot of stuff has come out about Stephon Diggs this week. None of it good. Is this going to be a big distraction for them?
I don't think Mike Vrabel believes in distractions. I think he ends up just kind of, if Diggs is out there, he's out there. And if he's not out there, he's not out there. And I think he's going to run his team the way he runs it. And if the league says, hey, this guy can play, then Vrabel's going to be like, you know what? Shut up and get out there and play. And if Diggs is like, I don't think I can, he's going to be like, then go the F home.
Man.
If you don't want to be here, I don't need you here.
I am going to take the Patriots this week.
Me as well.
The 4-12 Washington Commanders at the 11-5 Philadelphia Eagles. It has not been a good season for the Commanders. Do you think a healthy Jaden Daniels is really all they need to bounce back to being a contender?
We talk a lot about quarterbacks and, who's an elevator. And I think earlier this show, I just termed the executioner, the guy that just executes but doesn't really elevate. I definitely think Jaden Daniels is an elevator at the quarterback position. His ability to make plays off schedule, he's got a plus arm, plus mobility. That being said, a healthy Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel all season. They need to upgrade the running game. Zach Ertz, ancient as he was very productive at the tight end position. Teams always need offensive line help, and the Commanders needed some work on defense as well. So is he enough? If everybody's healthy, I think he's enough for the offense. We see teams piece together the running back position all the time, much to our chagrin. And it was an Achilles for Eckler, correct?
Yeah. And so I think he's probably – I think he and Ertz could well be like done.
I mean, if I had to bet on one of them being productive when they come back next year, I'd probably bet on Ertz. just because at the tight end position, the requirement for explosiveness is not near as much as it is at the running back position. I don't know that the duo of Chris Rodriguez and Bill Krosky-Merritt is going to get them to the next level. So, they're probably going to be either in the free agent or draft running back market. Jeremy McNichols is, he's probably going to be back as their RB4 for another season and stumble his way into a 40% snap share by the end of the season because of whatever. But no, I think Daniels has the ability to elevate the offense, but he can't elevate the defense.
Yeah. Meanwhile, for the Eagles, can either be the number 2 or number 3 seed, but it's been a kind of uneven, unimpressive season. How do we feel about them as contenders in the NFC?
They feel kind of like the Brad Johnson Ravens, or who was it that played quarterback for the?
I think Brad Johnson was for the Buccaneers.
Buccaneers, yeah, or the Trent Dilfer Ravens.
Yeah.
Which
is ironic since they supposedly, they have a Super Bowl MVP at quarterback.
And it's just, they feel like they're happy to win ugly. And, well, everybody except A.J. Brown is happy to win ugly. They will grind it out with the running game. And if they can get by throwing 25 passes and the defense can contain the other team's offense, and they win 17-14, they don't care. Nick Sirianni's like, look, I'd rather win ugly than lose pretty. And I totally get that. And they have a good defense. They have an offense that when pushed can make some plays. They're just not really built to play from behind. And that comes down to Jalen Hurts. It'll be interesting to see what Tanner McKee does in this game. Does he get out there and sling it around? Because he is, probably being a capable tush push guy because he is 6'6" and 235 pounds. He certainly doesn't run like Jalen Hurts, but he can throw the ball pretty well.
I'm going to take the Eagles in this game, but I would not be surprised if they end up being a one and done in the playoffs, especially if they're playing like the Rams.
Yeah, I'm taking the Eagles as well.
Sunday Night Football, one of the other real meaningful games this week, the 8-8 Baltimore Ravens at the 9-7 Pittsburgh Steelers. Lamar Jackson going to start. But I want to ask you about Derrick Henry. He has seemingly carried the Ravens down the stretch. He had signed a 2-year deal a couple of years ago. Do you think he's back with the Ravens in 2026?
I think if he has his way, he is. If they're like, hey, thank you for your service, and don't make him an offer or make him a very insulting offer, I think he walks. Whether or not he decides to retire is a whole nother question. I don't think he does. But I think John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson are a couple guys that are they can get very nostalgic, and Henry being there and playing the role he has the last couple seasons, I think Harbaugh saw with Justice Hill and what he can provide to the offense that if they need to, they can bring Henry back, and Henry isn't going to throw a fit if they're like, hey, you're on the bench for the next couple series because we're playing the 4-minute offense, and we're going to carry that for the rest of the game or whatnot. Henry doesn't go to he doesn't pull an AJ Brown and get pouty or whatnot. He wants to win, and so he's going to do whatever the team needs. And if that means Justice Hill is in there because we're throwing the ball a bunch now because we're behind, then that's what it means. And Henry gets ready for next week. It goes back out there on snap one and starts grinding it out again in the next game.
For the Steelers, it's been a weird season. If they lose, they are out. They have talked a lot this week about potentially just running it back with the same coaching staff and trying to bring Aaron Rodgers back and doing it again. If they lose, do they consider making any big changes?
No, because they're just not a team that makes big changes. They're gonna, use bubble gum and, gum wrappers and kind of paste over the holes and try to keep it together. There's been a little bit of talk that Tomlin might finally be ready to go, you know what? I'm going to walk. I'm going to leave here after 14, 15 seasons, whatever it is, having never had a losing record. My legacy is cemented in the long line of Pittsburgh Steelers coaches, Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, Mike Tomlin. We're all going to be legendary. I've won a couple Super Bowls or a Super Bowl, and never had a losing record. And I'm ready to take some time off, relax. Maybe I'll get back into it in a year. There's been some talk about that. I don't know how much I buy into that. Because honestly, he feels like he's got Dan Campbell level competitiveness and has always been. I think that the winning record is important to him, almost at the expense of making a deep run in the playoffs. So I think he ends up sitting down and talking with ownership and then talking with Aaron Rodgers, and they see what direction they might like to take it. I think if I had to lean one direction, I lean Rodgers and Tomlin are back.
Yeah, I'm starting to think that too. But I'm taking the Ravens in this game.
So am I.
As crazy as this Ravens season has been, probably in the playoffs, I think whoever wins this game is a one and done, because they're either going to get the Texans or the Bills likely in the first round, and I don't think either of these teams is good enough to win those games, but we shall see. That is a wrap on Week 18. Games kicking off a little bit later today, but if you have some time to fill, maybe you were planning on watching Ohio State make a long run in the college football playoff, and now you're just staring at them. Dennis, what can the people do?
They can go over to their favorite podcast platform, hit that search bar, type in the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast, give us a like and give us a subscribe. Bang on Matt in the comments. That was dirty, Matt.
I do have a question, though. After we've seen now 2 years of this 12-team college football playoff, do you actually want to be a top 4 seed? Because
apparently not.
Top 4 seeds are 1 and 7.
They are.
I mean, it's not good.
It is not. But you know what? You have to be ready to play the games, the teams that are in front of you. I think I chalk more of it up to, honestly, the Brian Hartline accepting the FIU or SFU job, and then Day making the decision to not have him call plays. To me, I think he should have. I think you should have counted on your guy. Hartline's an Ohio State guy. He wasn't going to do anything detrimental to the team. And honestly, I think Ryan Day is one of his probably his biggest Achilles heel is calling plays.
It just, I mean, it's just been fascinating over 2 years to see the lack of success of the top 4 seeds.
Almost makes you think the committee that ranks them doesn't know jack shit, huh?
I don't know if it's that or if it's just, I've often wondered, like, college football is probably the only one of the major sports where you are playing such an intense season and building momentum only to be like on the shelf for a month.
Right.
And that takes a big toll. So we shall see how things progress, and we'll see how things progress for this NFL season in week 18. We'll be back next week talking about that and some exciting playoff matchups. So until then, enjoy your weekend of football.